into public buildings and this type of thing. So how can you possibly protect your country from these types of incidents?
When you heard of the Twin Towers and the bombing in New York City, did you even fathom that there might be a strike in Washington?
Well, I don't think at the beginning, no. I mean, everyone thought, okay, New York, but then, okay, you do think, okay, what about Washington? And the first thought is to the White House, because of course that is ultimately the symbol of power of the United States. And then to see the Pentagon, interestingly enough, the reports that came out initially were of plumes of smoke. People thought that it had perhaps been an explosion. There had actually been a construction crew, not... So people thought, well, maybe it was just some type of strange accident. But then there was a report from an Associated Press reporter who was there at the scene, who saw the plane crash, saw the tail of the plane crashing into the Pentagon, and so that was the confirmation that indeed this was a similar type of attack to what had happened in New York City.
Reuters is also reporting that the plane in the New York crash was American Airlines Flight 11 from Boston to Los Angeles. And a word to Canadians traveling today, all flights from Pearson, specifically Pearson Airport, International Airport in Toronto, to the United States have been canceled. That's the latest we have, but I should imagine, Rod, that across the country, every airport in the United States is shut down.
And Rosemary, back to you for a moment, because you know you.
No, here's an eyewitness. We might be able to hear.
No, I guess not. But there's a scene from. Now we do have some eyewitness clips.
Just shook. The building was shaking.
Came down, glass started popping. People got hurt. Stuff went on top of them, and it was a big explosion. Everything got dark, real dark, like snow. You can see behind me, oh, this is not snow. This is all from the building. It was a terrible nightmare.
Where exactly were you standing when this happened?
I was standing right in front of the World Trade Center.
So you were down the block here? And
right
you
there in the middle. Right, yeah.
Did you get hurt at all?
No, not me.
Did you see anyone around you getting caught up in it?
Yeah, I was with the firemen. We got hurt. We all went inside to this dark. We was inside the building when everything happened, but we came out alive.
What's your name?
My name is Dr. Angel.
Were you able to assist anyone before this happened?
Yes, I did. I help a lot of patients. A lot of them.
Well, there are a lot more people that need help now.
Need help,
so
yeah.
if you're capable, maybe you should...
yes, I'm going to go back. I lost my ID, but I try to go back.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks a lot for talking to us.
Thanks.
We...
to go back, Alan. I mean, these people are saying go back to the scene where you were helping people.
No, you can't afford to do that because there could be other explosions afterwards. We don't know whether the fuel in the aircraft's exploded yet.
We saw the tower topple.
That's right.
Now here's another guy. We're just going to sort of dip in and out if we can on...
All the traffic, all the people traffic was running up. And I'm looking up, I'm trying to call the station, trying to find where we are. And I look up and the tower just starts crumbling down. And everybody in the street just stops and started crying and bawling. And I'm standing next to a fireman. He said, yeah, they just bombed the Pentagon too. So that's basically where I saw. Then I came running down here. Traffic's not allowed past Warren Street. And you see what's here.
Do you know which of the two towers?
The one without the main antenna on it. The second one that was hit.
That's the further south? This more southerly tower?
I think it's Tower 1. I'm not too sure the exact.
And you actually saw it from the top down collapsing?
I saw it come, it came sideways like this. It just collapsing on top of itself. It was amazing, but very upsetting to watch the whole thing come tumbling down. So we all thought it was another explosion, and then we looked up, instead of being two, there's one. And a big plume of smoke.
You were walking or driving?
I was running. I was stopped in the subway around 14th Street. Had to jump out in the middle between cars and run down the catwalk to get out of the subways, because all the subways were stopped. And then I just started hoofing it down from West 4th Street. There was only traffic going northbound, nothing going, everything was jammed going back this way.
So just in case people are just tuning in, tell me again what you saw, what you heard.
Around 6th Avenue and Houston Street, I was trying to make phone calls. I looked up and I heard an explosion, and then I saw everybody in the street react first. People crying, people on the ground, everybody lying down. And then I looked up and I saw this huge plume of smoke and the tower just crumbling, and it just turned into a huge plume of smoke. And next thing you know, there's smoke in one tower, and that's what we're seeing right here.
Okay, I just want to cut in here and tell you that we are now getting reports of an explosion on Capitol Hill. We have with us Alan Bell, a terrorist expert, and in Washington we have our Washington reporter Rosemary Thompson. Rosemary, can you give us any information on this latest report of some kind of attack on Capitol Hill?
Yes,
here it is.
We're looking at pictures.
CNN is just reporting, and we can see pictures of the Capitol. There has apparently been an explosion at Capitol Hill. This, of course, is the area that I was telling Oh, they're showing the Pentagon actually now, but apparently CNN has reporters on the ground on Capitol Hill where there has been some type of explosion. What a horrific day in Washington. I mean, it's just unbelievable. We've had some of the major buildings of the U.S. Capitol being bombed today in Washington, the Pentagon being one, of course, this morning, people seeing a plane crashing into the Pentagon. Now, apparently, the Capitol has been hit. One wonders what is next. It's really a horrific day here.
And that is not, just to confirm, that is not an airplane, or no one knows yet?
No one knows yet. This is just an initial report. We've heard of an explosion so far. CNN is reporting it.
And one of the planes, we can give you a little bit of new information on the plane that crashed into the World Trade Center in New York. An American Airlines flight from Boston to Los Angeles. This is from a spokesperson from the American Flight Attendants Union. This would have been a Boeing 767 capable of carrying 158 passengers. It was apparently hijacked from Boston. That would include, 2 pilots, 9 or 10 flight attendants, and again, this now being the 4th attack in the United States on Capitol Hill.
Again, to Rosemary in a moment. Back to Alan Bell, the terrorist expert here in our studio. In broad daylight, this was no sneak attack.
Oh, no.
So, okay, a 4th attack. I mean, just
I mean, now they've got to be prepared for everything. I mean, they're evacuating most of the government buildings now. I mean, if they've done this, they're slowly, and this is an orchestrated attack on Washington. If you remember the orchestrated attack on the embassies, that was done across 4 countries.
Here is footage now of the footage of the tower that collapsed and is collapsing in New York City. And again, from some of the witnesses on the street, these people very lucky to get away, I would think.
Obviously the chaos on the streets of both cities now, and cities across, Rosemary, that country, I should imagine. I understand they've also evacuated the Sears Tower in Chicago.
That's right. I mean, every airport in this country has been shut down. Obviously, all of them, or everyone is concerned that another airplane could be taken as a hostage situation. So the airports are shut down. Most of the major government buildings are shut down. Anything that is of any symbolic importance in the United States has been shut down. Washington itself, of course, is the capital of all of those places, as well as New York, as we saw with the World Trade Exchange. But here in Washington, there are so many potential targets, the White House being one. We've seen the Capitol now with this apparent explosion, the Pentagon, the White House, the State Department. The list goes on and on and on. And in all of those places today, people have been told to leave work quickly, carefully. But of course, people are in a panic situation. This is a city that feels under siege.
We are looking at pictures, and again, we're going to get back to Rosemary Thompson, where there have been 2 strikes, Capitol Hill and also the Pentagon in Washington. And we are looking at pictures in New York City. That was videotape of, I believe that's the South Tower that collapsed earlier, and the panic and chaos that ensued. Alan, you just flashed me over a note and said that the flames indicate that it was a bomb. And that was the plane, that was the 2nd strike.
That was the 2nd strike. I hadn't seen any of the video footage before, but when that explosion, the explosion I just saw on that video was definitely an explosion of a bomb-type material, because...
A plane would not explode like that?
It would, but what I'm saying is it was not a normal explosion because of the flame, the red flame, the smoke, which indicates a clear explosion of some description.
Does that surprise you then? I mean, if there was some kind of explosive on an American Airlines plane, it means somebody got through security somewhere.
Yeah.
Is Boston, I mean, that's the largest Logan, isn't that one of the...
That's right.
But also a very busy airport. Very busy, one of the busiest airports, and it's a big airport, but very congested there.
But you have to remember, the bomb could be the aircraft.
Yes.
I mean, that's what you need with the fuel. You don't need to put a bomb on an aircraft.
Again, looking at pictures now from Washington, D.C.
And we have an eyewitness out of Washington who reports that the plane that hit the Pentagon was flying low and fast. Again, strategy, Alan, on this kind of attack, for people just joining us, give us some perspective on this type of attack, jumping in, hijacking an airplane and slamming it literally into buildings full of thousands of people.
One of the biggest problems that they have in Washington is, as I said, is the national airport in close proximity. I was in Washington a week ago, and there was planes flying all over the city at heights anywhere from about 500 feet to about 1,000 feet. So it's very difficult controlling airspace now around Washington.
Now, you just said, you talked about the the fire you saw in the footage from New York. One of the eyewitnesses in Washington is now saying that there was a huge fireball, an orange fireball. He saw the tail of the large airline and it plowed right into the Pentagon. Again, does that indicate to you also that there was some kind of explosive on that plane?
No, that could have just been the fuel going. If all I know is the explosion I saw was definitely an explosion.
Okay, and
we have received word that the other tower in New York City may crumble. Again, we have one of the towers of the World Trade Center has crumbled to the streets in New York City after the second, I believe that was the second.
That's right.
Suicide bomber attack. I believe this is again the first tower that was attacked. It was higher up. I think the second strike, Alan, came a little bit lower.
Came in the middle.
So,
and this apparently, obviously inside, could only imagine the hell on the streets in New York City.
First Canadian reaction, Canadian Transportation Minister David Collinette was in Montreal when he was reached by reporters, and obviously, I mean, as is everybody, Mr. Collinette saying he is shocked, stunned, and distraught. He wants to assure the Canadian public that all security in this country is being taken very seriously. If it was caused, he says, deliberately, which clearly it seems to have been by someone, it is horrible, he says. Other U.S. government institutions, including the Treasury and State Department, Rosemary, I understand, have also been evacuated the city after this second attack in Washington. The fourth overall has virtually shut that city down, and what's unfolding on the streets there? Okay, obviously Rosemary is not with us on the line.
Just something else, Lisa, and also Alan. One of the two planes that crashed into the World Trade Center was hijacked after takeoff from Boston, the U.S. official said. The second plane may have flown out of Newark, New Jersey. And that was from an official speaking on the condition of anonymity. At this point, I guess it doesn't really matter where they came from. I've got to deal with what's happened here and fend off any other attacks that may happen. What is going through the mind of President Bush right now as he tries to assemble the military and the Air Force?
Well, the first priority of everyone in the U.S. is try to prevent other attacks if there's other attacks in the pipeline. Whether this is the last attack, we don't know yet, so we've got to be prepared for other attacks.
Okay, we want to go now to Blake in Jerusalem Radio. Blake, you're with us on the line. Give us some reaction if you can. Blake Lambert from Jerusalem Radio, if you can give us immediate reaction.
Okay, no reaction right now from the Israeli government. One thing we have heard, and we've heard equal denial claims, is that the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine is allegedly in a claim to Abu Dhabi Television, which is based in the United Arab Emirates, has claimed responsibility for one of the attacks. Now, just to give people an idea what the DFLP is, it's a rejectionist group that used to be part of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. These two groups are part of the PLO. They rejected the Oslo process. The DFLP, however, has never carried out, to my knowledge, to what I have seen, to what I have read, carried out such an attack on such a scale. So again, as I've mentioned, there has been a claim of responsibility and a counterclaim, but I can say people in Israel are extremely, extremely fascinated, worried, and transfixed by this story because once people heard the name DFLP, it suddenly alerted everybody that this may be a story that is related to the ongoing conflict in the region.
Yeah, and of course the history with the World Trade Center, the February 26th bombing in 1993, an attack that was meant to force the United States to curb its support for Israel and to stay out of the Middle East. Instead, it resulted in heightening of security at public buildings across the country and increased the attention to the threat of terrorism.
And if you think maybe, Blake, I don't know, you tell me, but you know, the United States having just pulled out of the World Conference on Racism this past weekend in Durban, any perspective on that?
Let me put it to you this way, for people can understand the data that I have. I have seen polls, at least 3 over the last year or two from the Jerusalem Media and Communications Center, which is based in East Jerusalem. They asked their respondents a question: how many feel that the U.S. is biased in favor of Israel? The response is about 95%. People who know this region do feel the Palestinians are biased in favor of Israel. Now, that's a huge leap of logic to go from point X or from point A to where we're at now. Again, so I don't think we can absolutely make that connection. But yes, there has been a traditional feeling that from Palestinians that the U.S. is completely in Israel's pocket.
Blake, let's stay on the line, please, with us as we try to cover this the best we can. Back to Rosemary Thompson in Washington. Apparently, Rosemary, as we take a look more at what's going on at the Trade Center, there is extensive damage, apparently.
And a car bomb, I've just learned, at the State Department.
That's right.
We've just heard.
That's right. We just have a report of a car bomb outside the State Department in Washington. That's just a few blocks away from our offices here at CTV News. This would be the third attack in Washington today. We have the Pentagon early this morning, then the Capitol, and now the State Department. 3 targeted already in Washington. It's just an initial report. We don't have a lot of detail yet, but this has just happened.
And also, I want to just jump in here and say that all U.S. flights have been diverted to Canada. That's the latest word we're receiving. But Rosemary, you know, we've just been listening to Blake Lambert at Jerusalem Radio, just sort of citing in Arab East Jerusalem, 95 or 90% of the people in Arab East Jerusalem believe that the United States does show favoritism toward Israel. You know, this has been a really contentious 2 weeks for the U.S. in the role and in pulling out of that conference in Durban.
Well, that's right. I mean, the United States didn't want to take a role of seeing Israel being the one country that was going to be singled out in Durban as being a racist country. So the United States decided even before the conference was to take place that it didn't want to be part of it.
Rosemary, we're looking at live pictures right now. The second tower has just toppled to the ground at the that is the second of the 2 twin towers at the World Trade Center in New York City.
One of the greatest land sites in North America, one of the symbols of the United States,
certainly
is no longer.
One of the targets in 1993 of the bombing at the World Trade Center was because of its symbolism, because it is the example of American capitalism. Alan, our terrorism expert here in the studio, and Rosemary Thompson in Washington. I mean, I think we're all just sitting here in a total state of shock.
It's extraordinary. It's just an extraordinary moment. I mean, who could have imagined this? This is the Capitol. This is the symbol of America's financial might and know-how in the world, and it's gone now. And the people, I just can't imagine those poor people. And to think of the people that were in the planes that crashed into this building, one would imagine the terror of these poor people.
The innocent people who are there, who have absolutely some of them who wouldn't even know what a terrorist group is, or would know certainly about what happened at the World Trade Center years ago.
Alan.
We're going to work in the morning, we're showing up, and a cataclysmic event in the United States.
Time, 9 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. I mean, in New York City, we can sure imagine that with the markets opening. Here's a replay of the visuals. You know, those people would be crowding in there at 8 a.m. So we know this is like maximum time to target.
There's over 20,000 people working in those towers.
The worst day in the history of the United States.
Well, you know, Alan, I want you to give me some background here on, I mean, I can't even think of another terrorist attack anywhere in history am I wrong on that?
No, this will go down in the annals. As far as the U.S. was concerned, obviously the biggest one was Oklahoma. That's now been well surpassed.
Now let's talk about the difference between Oklahoma and really, you know, you bring up a really interesting point, because in the very early hours after the Murray building in Oklahoma City was bombed, it was immediately believed that it was foreign infiltrators, and certainly Timothy McVeigh has just been put to death as a result of that bombing. Put this in perspective, how dangerous it is really now to assume that it is outside influence.
Well, we can't assume anything, and I was one of the very few people after the Oklahoma bombing to say, let's not point the finger in the wrong direction this particular time, because if you remember, a lot of the Muslim groups were being attacked because they believed that they were responsible for it. So there's going to be a lot of homework to be done. There's going to be a lot of other terrorist groups who are going to turn around and say, we did it.
And every minute there was a news report saying that some terrorists came forward to take credit for Waco, and again, more footage.
Both center towers of the New York City, in the heart of Manhattan, the World Trade Center. You're looking at the latest pictures out of New York, the collapse of both towers. There's been now the third attack in Washington, a car bomb in front of the State Department. First it was the Pentagon, then it was Capitol Hill. That brings the total to 5. This is the replay of that second tower
And
collapse.
the first 3 attacks being planes, airplanes, suicide bombers. The 4th attack I don't think we're sure about yet, but it's obvious now that this group that has done this has now mounted some sort of ground assault.
That's right.
Well, this is it. How massive an organization and how much planning. If you take us back to, and I know I spoke to you so many times during the fear leading up to 2000 that terrorist attacks were going to unfold across the United States. Is this what we were talking about then?
I think we anticipated these types of attacks at the millennium, the end of the millennium. And it didn't transpire. Whether they thought, well, everyone's prepared now for those attacks, let's just carry on planning. But getting back to the planning of these types of operations, this would have taken years to plan. A long, long time to plan. They'd have to get the planes right, the right people in the right positions, the car bombs in the right locations.
I look again towards Manhattan.
This is shocking. This is the debris now. We're looking at the fallout from the collapse of this 110-2. I'm not positive that both towers were 110 stories, but 20,000 people, do you say, Alan, working in these two buildings?
Massive casualties.
50,000, we're hearing.
You would think. So the millennium potential doesn't happen, and you would think. Now, do you think that the United States let its guard down?
No, I don't think they'll let its guards down. I mean, they're aware of the fact now that terrorist attacks can be perpetrated on their soil. Until the First World Trade Center attack, they didn't think that was possible because of their security might, their intelligence information, etc.
All flights out of Ottawa, we've just received word, have also been canceled. So clearly the Canadian government is taking enormous precautionary measures as well. Just in case, as we all know, we have been called in the past, Alan, and you've discussed this many times, a route, a conduit.
And once again, I look at the North Tower. The Canadian military has stepped up security at installations following the attacks. Military police have replaced commissionaires at the gates of the Halifax Dockyard and nearby Shearwater Air Base. Precautionary measures, apparently.
Can we go help, Alan? Like, what do we have to offer, honestly?
No, we can't help this. I mean, the Americans have the infrastructure in place to be able to get some type of order out of this chaos. And they won't require help from outside at this particular moment in time.
And what happens, like this kind of a massive attack on the United States, then what happens with all the NATO partners? Do we all have to get involved in some, give me some...
You are now looking at, there's going to be major policy changes around the world now. I mean, this is devastating, and once everyone finds out how many people have actually been killed and mutilated and injured, when we see the final cost, whenever that happens to be over the coming weeks, then a decision will be made in such a position whereby there's going to be dramatic responses to this.
On the line, Peter Craig is the general manager at Lester B. Pearson International Airport in Toronto. Hi, Peter.
Hello.
What is happening at the airport?
Well, obviously we're in irregular operations here at the airport now. All flights to and from the U.S. have been suspended until further notice, and we're just trying to keep things as smooth as possible here at the airport.
Peter, were the flights that were, moments or even half an hour away from various American airports, were they rerouted to this country? And if so, what is this status of the Pearson Airport?
I can't speak fully to that issue. You'd have to talk to the air traffic controllers and Nav Canada. I understand they are currently working on that issue at this point. From the airport standpoint, we are more than willing and able to accept flights should they be redirected here.
Peter, we again received word that the flights from the United States and to the United States, or to the United States, have been canceled. Is that wide sweeping across Canada?
I understand it is. I can't speak for every airport across the country, but I do understand that's the way it is. It's certainly the way it is at Pearson Airport.
Have you wandered through the airport? What is the general sentiment there, if you can imagine what's unfolding in the United States?
Well, obviously, I think people are shocked by what has happened, and they're wondering what the impact here is at the airport. So we're trying our best to inform passengers here at the airport what's going on. The other thing I'd like to say to passengers, people who have flights today from Pearson Airport, scheduled flights, likely those flights aren't going to happen, especially in North America, and I think you could probably call the airlines to confirm that, but it is irregular operations today, and I would suspect the entire schedule will be disrupted.
Peter, back to you just in a second. Saudi dissident Osama bin Laden warned 3 weeks ago, we have received word, that he and his fellow followers would carry out an unprecedented attack on U.S. interests for its support of Israel. It is nothing from the United States to report, but we have a quote that says it is most likely the work of Islamic fundamentalists. Bin Laden warned 3 weeks ago he would attack American interests again, an unprecedented attack, a very big one. We have had 5 huge attacks today, the 2 biggest on the World Trade Center.
Alan, I want you to comment on that, and also, you know, I remember before the G8 summit in Genoa, the security was massive, and one of the reasons for increased security around George W. Bush was because at that point, Osama bin Laden had, if you recall, even released video of his troops training for the ground and air assault, is how they described it, that was going to unfold there because the United States was the target, but it was in that location. That didn't happen, and everybody said, oh, you know, there it is again, Osama bin Laden just sort of inciting fear.
Well, Bin Laden made that statement 3 weeks ago. There's no way could this have been planned in 3 weeks. It's absolutely impossible to plan this type of attack in 3 weeks. So whether it's Bin Laden who's doing this or whether it's another group, we don't know yet.
And why would you even release? I mean, obviously, like we said before, it's too soon to really say. Even the reports out of the DFLP Palestinian organization have since been denied. So it's tough to really associate anybody with this at this point.
I think we should maybe go out to Blake Lambert.
Is Blake still with us?
Is Blake still with us? Blake, are you there?
Trying to find out.
I think we're going to try it. Again, this quote from Abdul Bari Atwan, the editor of the London-based Al-Quds Al-Arabi newspaper, is the man who has said this, that about the Islamic fundamentalists led by bin Laden. And you would wonder now, you know, with this gets out, what?
Do you put credence in it?
Yeah. Do you have credence if they said? I mean, who would know? Would they have a threat in Washington, for instance, if they warned 3 weeks ago? Who would they warn? Who would they talk to?
Well, most of these warnings are just, it's rhetoric. The majority of it rhetoric, as it is in Northern Ireland.
Would they get warnings daily?
They get warnings on a regular basis. As they'll have 5 or 6 groups who will claim responsibility for this. Bin Laden has got the infrastructure, the money, and the ability to put something like this together. There's no doubt about that. As for other minor terrorist, Islamic terrorist groups, they don't have the reach that Bin Laden has. So it's a case of waiting to see what comes out.
Okay, so 3 weeks. You say 3 weeks it would be impossible to organize this kind of orchestrated attack on the United States. Any perspective then on how long something like this would be?
Well, what you have to do, you've got to bring all the people to a central location. You then got to bring the explosives they're going to use on the attack. You then got to look at flight paths, which airports you're going to hijack, because if you hijack an aeroplane too far away from Washington or New York, the warning is going to go out and the military could take affirmative action. That's never happened, and whether it will, I don't know.
So you would think any airstrikes that would happen, hopefully we have not seen another airstrike, but potentially throughout the United States, you may see potential bombings.
You may see potential bombings, but I think the focus is the heart of the U.S., which is
population base, the capital.
Part of the Pentagon now has collapsed. We're bringing you these pictures as quickly as we can, and some of them are live, some of them are replays of the shocking video, the events as they unfolded since 9 a.m. this morning. So that's almost 2 hours ago that the first airplane crashed into one of the towers at the World Trade Center. And
unbelievably, we have received word that there has been another plane crash in Pittsburgh. That may be unrelated, so we can't we must be speculative there. Peter, Greg, are you still with us? Peter?
But it does indicate the chaos, really, if you think about it. All right, all of the airplanes, as we were saying, that were sort of in the radar over the United States as these attacks were starting to unfold, the chaos in air traffic controllers. If this Pittsburgh accident, we don't know yet if it is related, but would you agree, Alan, that the chaos that must be unfolding in air traffic centers across that country?
Well, terrorists themselves will give you a target. They'll explode a bomb to get all the emergency services to it to respond, and then they'll have another bomb somewhere else. And I think that's what's happened here. They've flown a plane into the Pentagon. At the same time, everyone's looking at the Pentagon, and then what they're doing, they're detonating other bombs around the city and cars.
And the diversion technique. Yeah. And I wanted to ask Peter Gregg, who was at the airport, obviously, about security for people going in and out in Canada. And as you mentioned, we may not have to worry in Canada, but going in and out of, I mean, they've shut down airports throughout the United States. You look at the air strikes themselves. How is it possible, again, for people joining us, that this happened this morning, and the hijackings? How could terrorists get into the airports?
Well, they would carry out a reconnaissance and realize maybe there's a little bit of a glitch in this airport, but there's not a glitch in this airport. They would have walked through this. They would have done a rehearsal. They'd have got on the same aircraft at the same time, going to the same location to see what happens, what's going on.
If they're willing to die for their supposed vision, certainly a rehearsal would be nothing for that. And getting merely arrested would be nothing.
Also, a word, Alan, this may, I'm sure, not surprise you. All Canadian borders have also been closed. So give us some background, if you can, on some of the conversations. And I know there were many and conferences indeed to discuss exactly this cross-border terrorism.
Well, one of the problems they're going to have now is there's obviously ground force terrorists involved as well if they planted these car bombs or in other locations. So those people are going to now escape. And probably the best way for them to escape is probably maybe leave the U.S. They can't leave the U.S. by air. So what the Americans are doing now, the Americans will probably ask the Canadian government to close down the border so anyone that's in the U.S. now doesn't get out while they conduct their investigation.
And there has been a lot of talk about supposed terrorists who are in Canada. What does the RCMP do now? Do they get to these people now and make sure that nothing's happening?
Well, what they could do, they could start picking up people they've got under surveillance and they suspect of various different activities and start questioning them, or that will have been requested by the U.S. forces anyway.
We have Rosemary Thompson has just gone down to the streets of Washington to see what's unfolding there as the third attack strikes that city. And Alan Fryer, you are with us, I understand, our Washington bureau chief. Give us what's the latest information out of Washington?
It's a very eerie scene on the streets right now, Lisa. People are just frantically, I wouldn't call it panic, but frantically trying to get out of the city any way they can. This obviously is unprecedented. There have been reports of explosions at the State Department and on the Capitol, and of course what we believe was a passenger plane crashed into the Pentagon. An entire wing of the Pentagon, from what we can tell, has collapsed in on itself. Washington as well as New York obviously under attack. People doing whatever they can simply to get out of the city. President Bush now, we are told, is on his way back from Florida, where he was on a trip. He's on Air Force One and heading to the White House. And we and every other reporter in the city right now trying to find out where the major players are located right now, including the Vice President. As you can imagine, it is nothing short of chaos. And I should add a very bizarre and frightening scene. As you know, the airspace right across the United States has been closed down to commercial air traffic, but we have seen military aircraft patrolling the skies over Washington.
Alan, and what we may have is some massive hijackings going on. Unconfirmed reports of a 747 crash in Pittsburgh. Again, unconfirmed reports, potentially maybe to get to a larger center, and the plane crash potentially may have been even shot down. We're not sure. But also, Prime Minister Jean Chrétien has said he is horrified by the attacks in the United States, calling the terrorists cowardly and depraved. And we'll receive more word. But Alan, what's it like outside right now in Washington?
Well, as I said, people are doing whatever they can to get out of the city. All federal government buildings have been closed and evacuated. It's a strange scene. People just frantically trying to find any way out of the city that they can.
Alan, was there any early warning, any rumblings on the streets anywhere over the last few days? We've just, you know, had this information that Osama bin Laden 3 weeks ago warned that he and his followers were going to carry out an unprecedented attack on the United States. And also, we've just received word from Palestinian President Yasser Arafat condemning the aircraft attacks. He sends his condolences to the people and to the president, completely condemning the serious operation, completely shocked, he says he is. But you give me some perspective, if you can, from Washington on the warnings that Osama bin Laden allegedly put out 3 weeks ago.
Well, obviously, the CIA and other intelligence agencies in the city are receiving and evaluating threats against the United States almost on a constant basis. And as you say, Osama bin Laden's name often pops up at the center of them. Now, how many of these threats are taken seriously, we don't know. Obviously, all were investigated, but clearly this comes as a surprise. Nobody in the U.S. expecting an attack of anything resembling this magnitude.
Thank you, Alan Fryer in Washington. Alan Bell in our studio. If this is confirmed that a plane has gone down in Pittsburgh, again, we cannot confirm that yet. Air traffic controllers, how much training do they have right now? I mean, obviously has been shut down, but how much training would they have in situations like this that happened around 9 o'clock a.m. Eastern? Everything wasn't shut down at that point. How much training would they have when they know that there may be planes that are doing things that aren't
Well, first of all, they would identify which planes have been hijacked, because that can be done by the pilots. The pilots can send out a signal beacon when a plane is hijacked, so they would know instantly which planes have been hijacked.
Now, I just want to give you, as I said, we're just going to give you the latest information as we receive it. We've just heard that another hijacked plane is being monitored as expected to head toward Washington. So that is happening right now. Like, I can't believe we actually would be getting that. Exactly. What do you do if you have a word from an air traffic controller that a plane's been hijacked?
That's going to be the President of the United States decision, whether he shoots the plane down.
Especially
Look, live coverage we're looking at. Sorry, this is, oh, okay, the World Trade Center,
especially when you have civilians, when you have people down below, you shoot down a plane, you can again have massive casualties. If this is, do you take the hit? I mean, it sounds trite, but you take the hit at what might be a U.S. building.
No, I think they would take the aircraft out in a less residential area. They can take it out over the ocean or wherever the case may be, because the pilots of those planes are obviously aware of what's going on, and they know if they've got a guy behind them with a weapon who's telling them to fly into a city to crush it, most pilots will probably take their chances and do whatever they can do somewhere else.
But you think of Washington, the size really of Washington, the proximity of these buildings to each other, the military now on 1,000% alert of what's unfolding. How easy would it be now to continue penetrating?
It would be very difficult to penetrate Washington airspace now, because I should imagine they've now got a CAP, a combat air patrol up there of U.S. jets. But it's only going to be the President of the United States who's going to authorize them taking out a U.S. airline. I
understand Colin Powell he is in Colombia, will also be heading back to Washington as quickly as possible.
We can also tell you that New Brunswick Premier Bernard Lord apparently in New York City today on a trade mission. Certainly hope that he is all right. We certainly hope that...
well, I mean, our hopes and prayers to everybody. This is just such a truly shocking and tragic event across the United States.
You cannot even hope to put it in words. You can think about Swiss Air. You can think of all the tragedies. You know, many of us didn't live through a world war or weren't here when the world wars were going on. We've always said that, you know, thank goodness we've never gone through something like that. Our ancestors, our forefathers have, and they're haunted by this, by the wars. We've had tragedies, massive disasters, Mother Nature disasters, but I cannot ever think of something like this.
And Alan, I want to bring Alan Fryer in Washington, because I mean, it's got to be pretty frightening, I should think, and pretty surreal to be in Washington right now, to be watching this unfold steps from your bureau.
Well, surreal is a good word to describe that, Lisa. And, you know, the question that's going through my mind right now is the planning that obviously went into this terrorist attack. It looks, if all these reports are confirmed, that 5 passenger jets have been hijacked almost simultaneously, 2 that went into the World Trade Center, another that crashed into the Pentagon. We're getting reports, as you say, of a 747 crashing in Pennsylvania, perhaps near Pittsburgh, and reports unconfirmed so far that military jets are monitoring a 5th passenger jet, perhaps hijacked somewhere near Washington. So this is just unprecedented and incredible. The words don't exist really to describe it.
Yeah, Alan, let's just go back to Alan Bell for a minute. Might those jets that have been hijacked been backups for those original terrorists and now are fleeing?
It could be, it is a possibility, but if there are suicide bombers on board, they'll just go down into an American city and take out whatever they can as part of the cause. Suicide bombers are not going to flee from their task.
Well, this kind of coordinated terrorist attack, I understand Alan Fryer, and you can just jump in, Alan, actually, because what you're probably receiving late new information all the time also, but that there's just mass agents throughout Washington patrolling with automatic weapons, trying, I guess, to avert any future disasters, car bombs, this sort of thing.
Right, absolutely. And as people flee the city, as they have been doing all morning, I think what we're going to see within short order is Washington look very much like a militarized armed camp as security forces and every available emergency vehicle move in. Obviously, the priority is to help the injured. A massive attack at the Pentagon, as you know, but then to secure the Capitol. And gosh, who knows how long it's going to remain that way.
Alan, to secure the Capitol, but also the country, when you think of the FAA ordering an entire nationwide air traffic system shutdown, I mean, as Alan Bell, our terrorist expert, said, they certainly have managed to shut the United States down.
Absolutely, and of course the government through the FAA probably had no choice until they get a handle on this situation, figure out just how widespread this terrorist attack was, exactly who was involved and what the targets were. Obviously, it was the only precaution that they could take given the situation, just to shut everything down and put a damper, especially over the nation's capital here in Washington, which is what's going on now.
Alan, all 5 stories of the West Wing of the Pentagon have collapsed. We can tell you that. We can also now confirm that a 767 jet has crashed near Pittsburgh, 80 miles southeast in Jennerstown. Again, it was speculative before that this was involved, but I don't think this is speculation anymore, Alan Bell.
No, there's a pretty good chance. I mean, you're not going to have this many aircraft going down in one day unless it's a planned event.
The impact of the Alan Fryer, you know, the Pentagon, the seat of military in the United States, the government of the superpower of the world. What is the big term impact here? Oh, apparently we have Yasser Arafat. We're going to take you live
to the American people for this terrible act. We are completely shocked, unbelievable.
Just as shocked as the rest of the world. I'm sure we're going to hear from world leaders. You know, we've heard from Jean Chrétien, who has also condemned these senseless terrorist acts. Again, Alan Fryer, before the Palestinian chairman Arafat stepped up to the microphone, I was asking for the impact on shutting down the government in that country.
Well, it's huge, and there are so many questions, Lisa, that haven't been answered. Obviously, right off the bat, the priority has to go to the victims of these terrorist acts. You know, it's hard to say, but we may be talking in the thousands, perhaps even the tens of thousands of lives lost. Obviously, a lot of questions, too, that a terrorist attack, a planned and coordinated terrorist attack on the United States of this magnitude obviously signals a huge security lapse, a lapse in intelligence. And obviously in the days, weeks, and months to come, a lot of questions are going to be asked about U.S. intelligence, what information they had and didn't have.
That's just, I think that is, and Alan Bell, certainly you can talk to this as well, the lapse, as Alan Fryer says, in intelligence?
Yeah, the lapse of intelligence, there will be some lapse of intelligence, but one of the biggest problems you've got here is you don't know how long this incident has been in the making. This could have been a fallout from the 2000 millennium attacks. Maybe they planned this on the night. The security was too intense. They decided to backburner it.
We're going to
Let's go back to New York City once again.
Start evacuating?
Yeah, as soon as he got hit, I was thrown to a window. So I was very lucky to get out. There's a lot of people that didn't get out. There's a lot of people coming down the stairs, burnt up. It's bad.
Were there other people that were hurt, were lying
There
here?
was a lot of people hurt. They were lying on the floors, coming down the stairs. A lot of people had asthma attacks while they were coming down. It was bad. It hit in one World Trade Center, it hit somewhere on the 67th floor. I was on the 56th.
And was it chaos trying to come down the steps?
Yes.
What was it like? Describe it for us.
Everybody was on top of each other trying to come down, and then somebody finally calmed the crowd down to get them to come down the stairs in an orderly fashion and get them out of the building.
And what just happened now?
The building just came down. One of them, I don't know which one came down. I don't know if it was one or two.
What did you start doing when that happened?
Running. Like everybody else, but trying to calm the people down while they were running, because I told them this is how people get hurt. Is that when they start trying to, get out of the way, and it's just crazy. I just thank God I made it down from 56.
What's your name?
My name is Debbie.
Debbie, your last name?
Troy.
Troy, and where do you work?
I work at CMP Press.
Thank you. Thank you, Debbie.
Once again, that's the scene in New York City. If you're just joining us,
See, you can see that, we're just showing you tape as soon as we can get it, so forgive us if the tape rewinds, but we want to give you perspective also that, this is not just about the United States.
this is also really Alan Bell, terrorism expert, who joins us. And again, for the people joining us, there have been 4 plane crashes already, suicide bombers, 2 into the World Trade Center, which has been absolutely demolished, has crumbled to the city streets, 1 in the Pentagon, and they have lost the West Wing and 5 floors of the Pentagon, and also 1 in Pittsburgh, and hopefully we don't have any more, but this is obviously massive hijacking, massive strikes against the United States. Do we have to worry about other places in the world, and do we have to worry in Canada?
I think you'll see all the U.S. embassies around the world, all the U.S. consulates will instantly start a red alert on all of them, probably evacuate all of them, and basically close them down.
Already the U.S. Embassy in Buenos Aires has been evacuated after apparent attacks after the attacks in New York and Washington, so we're probably seeing that at U.S. embassies
around the world.
The irony of ironies, you were teaching a class this morning on terrorism.
Yes.
And now the worst possible terroristic attack in the history of our world has happened.
Give us some, if you can, some of your insight on what the people in that class would have been learning, and if there's really any way to learn enough to avoid this.
Well, I was basically talking about the origins of terrorism, and my pager started going off and went off for an hour for different people trying to get hold of me to comment. So I told them I had to stand them down for a couple of hours while I came and was interviewed. So
you know what's really amazing too. When we heard word, and I was doing an interview earlier, I had heard word that a plane had crashed into the World Trade Center. You immediately think accident.
That's right.
The first thing you think, and I thought, oh my goodness, this is terrible.
We really only realized that it was deliberate, I think,
until we saw the second
one, and then it was clear. And that was, again, 9 o'clock Eastern time, and then about 9:15 here you see the visuals, the first plane crashing into the world. Here it is, the second plane crash for those of you just joining us. Shocking video of that from early this morning. Alan Fryer, you're still with us in Washington. Not many minutes went by between what we're seeing right now from New York to the chaos now unfolding in Washington.
Right, and again, Lisa, it's just extraordinary, as we were talking about before, when things that go through my mind, as you know, and anybody who travels knows just how tight security is at airports throughout the United States, and it's nothing short of incredible to me that we have a situation, a parent situation, where up to 5 passenger jets, perhaps more, we don't know, have been hijacked on the same morning and used as an instrument of terror in New York City, in the nation's capital here in Washington, and elsewhere, apparently.
What about the Boston airport? Can you give us any insight on the Boston airport? If there's any reason at all why terrorists may have targeted it as perhaps easier access to infiltrate and you know, ultimately end in what we're seeing?
I really can't tell you, and as far as I know, Lisa, we've only got one confirmation that one jet that slammed into the, unless you have other information, it was one jet from Logan and Boston that was hijacked that went into the...
Yeah, we have received word, Alan, that one may have come from Newark. So
one from Newark,
which would think that perhaps even the Pentagon plane or the Pittsburgh plane came from other airports as well.
But getting back to your question, Lisa, no, there's no reason that I can think of that they would have singled out Boston or any of these other airports that have been mentioned.
How seriously do you think Americans, and particularly in the city that you're in right now, have taken these threats? I mean, it was all we talked about during, you know, lead up to Millennium.
I think it's just something that people live with here. You know, this is the stuff of novels, of film, and I think people just live with the talk that, yes, Washington, D.C. and other cities might one day be the target of a terrorist attack. Emergency officials are continually talking about and preparing for such an eventuality, although I really don't think anybody was prepared to deal with anything of this magnitude, any sort of attack on this scale.
I remember when the Oklahoma City bombing happened, and it was a federal building was the first word we heard, and I just remember that, you know, as the hours unfolded, there was also a daycare in there. There was also all of these other sort of smaller shops, this kind of thing. Any idea in the Pentagon, in the state capitol, would it all have been government employees that we'd be seeing there, Alan?
Well, I think it would be mainly government employees, obviously a lot of military officials at the Pentagon, but many federal government buildings, as you point out, Lisa, are equipped with daycare centers. And I think, you know, it's too early just to talk about the numbers, but it's almost unspeakable and extraordinary how many people, I think, at the end of this day, we are going to be talking about in terms of people who have lost their lives.
One of the worst days I can recall, again, and it was obviously an act of God, was the San Francisco earthquake, and we saw pictures of mass destruction. You think about the things that have been perpetrated before Oklahoma City, you think about the World Trade Center bombings, but the massive amount of casualties that we have here, this in our modern existence, not having seen and not lived through world wars, this is the worst day of our lives.
And you know, you can imagine, because this is just from information we're receiving on the wire services, so it means we don't necessarily have pictures to back these comments up, but you know, there's 50, imagine hundreds of doctors, and Alan, maybe you in your journeys to the Bureau or on the streets have seen this, but lines and lines of doctors just standing there at the ready for the hundreds and thousands of people who are suffering burns. You're seeing right now a man clearly injured by the debris in either Washington or New York. This is a firefighter. Alan, you know, facilities, all hands on deck across that country.
Right, and I think clearly this is a huge medical emergency, as you point out. We are getting reports from New York City and here in Washington that already area hospitals are overwhelmed. Every available doctor, nurse, obviously has been called in.
We've lost Alan Fryer. Another report has just come in. The Pentagon says a hijacked plane headed toward Washington is no longer a threat. There are reports a United Airlines plane has gone down at or in the vicinity of Camp David. Sources suspected the jet was en route to the Pentagon. The fighter jets had been scrambled. And again...
Alan, are you still there? So Camp David obviously is the location where U.S. presidents have always gone for. This has been the location of the Israeli, or the peace talks, the Middle East peace talks. We're going to listen in, though, here. This is New York, eyewitnesses.
Then about 10 minutes later, a second plane came, and it did the same thing, but it just went into the first World Trade Center on a lower level. And it blew out. Yeah, the second one hit hit building 2, and a big, huge ball of fire just blasted out. Then right after that, I'm sitting down and I'm crying, and I couldn't believe something like this would actually happen. And about 10 minutes later, then the whole building just started to collapse. And now 2 seconds ago, both of them collapsed. So now there's no more World Trade Center. This is ridiculous. I don't believe this. Then I just heard that another plane just ran right into the Pentagon. How can President Bush allow any plane to get near the Pentagon with all the sophisticated technology that we supposedly have had? This is just outrageous. This is ridiculous. Right now, I'm going to go head down that way. Hopefully, they'll let me get in and try to help somebody. Whoever needs help, I'm going to try to do my best.
Can I get your name, sir?
My name is Tony Bristow.
Spell your last name for me?
Bristow. Right now, I'm just going to try to help people. That's it.
Thank you.
Throughout North America right now is with the sophisticated technology. Back to Alan Bell in our studio, our terrorism expert. The sophisticated technology that we have, how is it possible that a day like today, a day that we never ever dreamed about, a day that movie producers couldn't even write, happened?
Suicide bombers. When you have people who are willing to perpetrate terrorist attacks and are not afraid to die for their cause, you can't stop those types of people.
Alan Fryer, in Washington, we've seen obviously security on past presidents in the United States, but can you compare it with George W. Bush and the increased security around him? And also, I'm not sure if you can give us new information on the reports of the United Airlines plane that's gone down in the vicinity of Camp David.
No, I haven't received any new information on that, Lisa.
Okay.
But I can tell you right now that the security around the president obviously is going to be unprecedented. He is, we are told, on his way back to the White House. Most of the working areas of the White House have been evacuated, but part of it obviously is actually a bomb shelter, and we can only imagine that some of the top-level officials in the government are there as we speak, and that is where President Bush is headed.
Alan, again, just another report. Mayor Giuliani in New York says, and quite obviously, I think we knew already, a tremendous number of lives have been lost on the attacks on the World Trade Center. What about, again, for Canadians, and let's put this in perspective, how safe we are right now? What about the embassy that's in Washington? What's going on there?
Well, I haven't had any report right now. Actually, we're going to be checking with the Canadian Embassy, but I can imagine that it, as well as all the other buildings in downtown Washington, has been evacuated. Obviously, when you have a situation like this, you have to take those sorts of precautions and take nothing for granted.
Alan Fryer, we're going to go to our colleague in Ottawa, CTV's Ottawa Bureau Chief Craig Oliver. Craig, you know, give us some perspective on what's happening in Ottawa right now as chaos unfolds. Really now, all of North America is shut down, every airport.
Yeah, the Department of Transport announced just a few moments ago that all of the airports in Canada are shut down. One of the reasons for that, of course, is that they want to know if planes are in the air, what their intentions are. Somebody said that you couldn't write a script like this. Actually, there are people who did write such scripts. I think of Tom Clancy novels. And so that the decision that'll have to be made, if you're a fighter pilot and there's a plane in the air and the airports have been shut down, is do you shoot that plane down again because it might be headed for a target?
What does this country do now, you know, I don't know, to help the United States, to in some way, what is our role as their next door neighbor and closest trading partner?
This will take weeks and months, of course, but the suspicion will be that at least the questions will be raised about whether or not the terrorists came through Canada. You'll recall what happened during this millennium year. Did they come through Canada? Our airports have been accused of being a sieve. So have our border points. So that will be certainly one of the issues that will be discussed here. At the moment, there are high-level meetings going on at the RCMP, the Solicitor General, the Department of Defense, and the Prime Minister's office. The Prime Minister has canceled a trip he was planning to Halifax today. You know, I think that the intelligence experts here tell me they don't believe that Canada is a target. The issue is, was Canada used to target the United States? And as I say, that'll be a long time being investigated.
Well, Craig, there have been reports, of course, over the years, and speculation at times and rumors that there are terrorists in this country. And what does the RCMP do now that this has happened, this demolition of New York City? Obviously, New York City will never be the same again. And Washington now, and a plane down in Pittsburgh. What does Canada do, though, with some of these suspected terrorists that are in our country?
Well, obviously, this is the job that CSIS is supposed to be doing. And I'm not here to say CSIS isn't doing it. At the moment, we simply don't have any information. But we do know that they have been accused in the past of having a border that's too loose, of letting terrorists get away on them. There's been a lot of criticism, a lot of it behind the scenes, a lot of it not public, of our intelligence agencies, just, because we don't see ourselves as a target, not being alert enough.
Now,
and I think there will be more questions like that raised. What strikes me about what's happened today is the incredible conventionality of it all. I mean, all of these intelligence agencies in the United States are about as high-tech as you can get. There's been speculation about any number of different kind of attacks on the United States by terrorists, and what happens? It's basically a kamikaze attack as old as the Second World War.
Well, that's a very good point, and I think one of the questions is, how does a lapse in security and intelligence happen in a country like the United States, or are these terrorist organizations so much further advanced than anybody really ever knew? Craig or Alan Bell, whoever wants to...
Well, of course they knew how sophisticated they are. I mean, I don't think that's anybody's secret. And remember, we are open, free societies. We can't shut our borders down the way dictatorships and other countries can do. We just can't treat our citizens that way. And for that reason, we will always be more vulnerable than other nations are.
Have we taken Osama bin Laden and the warnings seriously enough?
You'll recall that I think, what was it, a month or not much longer after the attack on the World Trade Center, the United States launched a couple of missiles at where they believed bin Laden was. There never seemed to be any follow-up on that. Nobody ever knew where the Clinton administration was going. Certainly, I think the U.S. will now have to and will respond in some way against someone, but first they have to try to find out what the targets are.
There have been, and over the years, there have been a lot of people, Craig, who have preached against the defense systems in North America, and there are even some government people who have talked, we're spending way too much money on installations, we're spending way too much money on the defense and intelligence. Obviously, today we've seen maybe we didn't spend enough.
But this was a very conventional failure. Yeah. Remember that. Yeah. People, terrorists obviously got through airport security, and then they were able, once they got on planes, to take the planes over.
We're going to listen in, Craig. We're going to, stop you. We'll pick you up again. But right now there's some security investigators commenting on camera.
So by 8:30, 9 o'clock, the building should have been full. Okay, so in other words, at 5...
Trying to bring you this as it arrives to us. Craig, you were saying out of the United States, give us some...
How easy this was, how suicide bombers...
Not that yes, and that it was also conventional. People got through airport security. Once they were on airplanes, they managed to take over the airplanes. I mean, one of the things we're going to have to start doing, I think, is putting armed unidentified marshals on aircraft.
Would that work, Alan Bell?
Yes, a lot of El Al and some of the Middle Eastern airlines do have what they call sky marshals on board. And these are individuals who sit in the various classes on the aircraft who are armed and looking and watching people's movements to see if anything's suspicious. But one of the problems with that is terrorists go onto the aircraft with no weapons, identify the sky marshals, overpower them, take their weapons off them, and then you've already got weapons introduced on the plane for you. So you're in a catch-22 situation. But getting back to the original situation about trying to plan to prevent this type of attack, you can't plan everything in terms of suicide bombers, because they're willing to do anything and everything to get through. When you make plans, excuse me, you're dealing with rational people, if you can call a terrorist a rational person. When people are willing to risk their lives and lives of others, you can't defend against that.
But the untold billions and billions and billions of dollars spent, certainly in the United States, on security measures and beefing up these kinds of high-tech systems so that they can outsmart the terrorists. You know, I think that's what some of the people who we've been listening to are asking on the streets of the United States right now is how did their sophistication beat the U.S. intelligence?
You cannot beat a guy who gets on a plane anywhere in North America, hijacks the plane and flies into a city. It's impossible to beat.
But as conventional, and Craig mentioned this, as conventional and you don't want to use, again, the term easy, but as this seems to be well planned, well orchestrated, the ability to get into the, they had to do this, they must have had to rehearse this today, because the way that the strikes happened within really an hour, and again, we're looking at that second plane that had only one thing in mind.
Alan Pryor, are you still with us in Washington?
Still here, Lisa.
Give me some sense, if you can. The last we heard there was a car bombing, and this plane, apparently a United Airlines plane that went down in the vicinity of Camp David. The impact, or the significance of Camp David, if you can.
Well, obviously that was the center of Middle East peace talks, and if the terrorists, if that's what they were, and we're still waiting for more information on that plan, wanted to send a message about Middle East peace, that would be a very symbolic place to crash a plane. Just one minor point you raised earlier, Lisa, we have checked with the Canadian Embassy here in Washington. They have told non-essential personnel that they are free to leave, but the embassy itself is remaining open for business.
Okay, and I can also add that Canada has opened our air strips, I guess, for humanitarian aid that will, I mean, the question is, there are things this country can do, and Craig, you might want to jump in here. There are things on a humanitarian level we can do.
Well, yeah, but first we have to have requests and know where to go and what is required. I mean, frankly, I don't think the Americans will require very much in the way of help from us in terms of medical emergencies. So it's difficult for me to know exactly what kind of help they will need. What we will be doing in these high-level meetings now that are taking place at the, by the way, the lead agency is the Prime Minister's office, the PCO as it's called, the Privy Council office, which is coordinating meetings between Foreign Affairs, the RCMP, the Solicitor General, and Immigration Canada, because we will now have much heightened security at our border points to try to ascertain that anybody involved in any of this, and remember that there had to be a lot of support people on the ground to back up people who took over airplanes. So to try to anticipate and grab people who are trying to come back across the border, if there are any.
After today, I should think, and this is to either Craig or
by the
Alan
way, Lisa, the airport in Ottawa has been evacuated.
It has.
We're not sure why.
All airports across the country are now closed. In fact, North America, essentially, has been shut down for air traffic.
By this hellish day, again, for those of you who just may have turned on, it has been the worst terrorist attack in the history of the world.
Jim Munson is heading to the Ottawa airport to find out.
Here is the word today of Palestinians hearing about the attacks in the United States.
The profile of these people. I mean, give me some understanding on why we're seeing cheering in the streets.
Well, because they only see one side of it. The Palestinians have got their own picture, and obviously all the political rhetoric's going backwards and forwards. So they see the Great White Satan, the U.S. now destroyed.
And this is all about the Middle East, then.
Yeah, that's right.
Again, two planes crashed into the World Trade Center, and they have been demolished. The Twin Towers. A plane crashed into the Pentagon. Bombs at Capitol Hill. U.S. State Department. A plane apparently in Pittsburgh has gone down. Massive casualties, not only on the ground, but think about the people who may have been on the commercial airlines. One airline, American Airlines Flight 11 from Boston to Los Angeles, the flight that went into, the second plane that went into the World Trade Center was a Boeing 767, would carry 158 passengers, would include 2 pilots and 9 or 10 flight attendants.
And I want to also throw in here to anybody who wants to comment that, you know, as we were saying before, this isn't just about security in the United States. We have word now that they're going to be closing the channel, the train path between England and France, the security measures, the closing of U.S. embassies. Alan, how far-reaching is an event like this around the world?
Well, obviously, you know, this is absolutely unprecedented. We're just getting confirmation, Lisa, that 2767s, American Airlines planes, passenger jets, were involved in the attacks on the World Trade Center. One, as we had mentioned before, that had left Boston en route for Los Angeles, and the other one that left Dulles Airport here in Washington area, also scheduled to go to Los Angeles.
Let me just break in again. We have received word, and Shelley helped me out again in the control room, of a plane that is on its way to Los Angeles that apparently they have lost control of. They do not know where this plane is, another hijacked plane from Boston to LA, and they're not sure where this plane is.
Now remember the last time
An American Airlines plane.
Word that another plane had been hijacked. It turned out not to be the case, so there's possibility right now that, you know, the pandemonium, Alan, you might agree with this, unfolding forces a lot of people to sort of be suspect of absolutely everything happening in U.S. airspace.
Well, I think pandemonium is the right word, Lisa, and obviously when the airspace was closed and a lot of planes diverted to Canadian airports, obviously it was going to be hard to keep track of all of them, so I think we have to monitor these reports, but wait for more information on them.
And, you know, there's going to be a news conference coming up. Well, we'll have news conferences, I should think, all day long and for the days and weeks ahead as this just sinks in. Key Canadian ministers are right now holding emergency meetings. Craig Oliver is with us from Ottawa. Craig, you know, this has got to be, in your opinion, also an unprecedented terrorist attack.
Well, in anybody's opinion, it's extraordinary. It's desperate and tragic and terrible. I mean, you just run out of words to describe what's happened here. You know, but there is a larger sort of global aspect to this, and that is that this is the Middle East crisis come to America, and that has to be dealt with. The issue between Jews and Palestinians must be resolved, and that really is what this brings home more than anything else. This would clearly not be happening were the crisis in the Middle East had it not reached the level it has reached.
And it has been escalating, and I don't know if you saw the pictures, but that point you just made was even more punctuated by the celebrations going on in Palestine.
So that the industrial nations who support, who try to be even-handed on Middle East policy, such as Canada and many others, are going to have to try again to find a resolution to the crisis in the Middle East.
But, you know,
they were tragically close a few months ago, and everything came apart over the issue of Jerusalem.
You know, Craig, yesterday we were speaking here on Canada AM to the mayor of Jerusalem, who basically said it is naive for anybody to even use the term peace process, that there's nothing that remotely resembles a peace process or talks going on. We know that this week Yasser Arafat was expected to talk with Ariel Sharon or Shimon Peres on the peace talks. Those were canceled because of weekend suicide bomb attacks in Jerusalem, throughout Israel and the West Bank, and now, you know, this unfolding today and the cheering on the streets.
And what might you think is going on in the Middle East right now on both sides of that border?
Well, whatever is going on, this war has now been carried to the United States.
Yes.
And the crisis in the Middle East has to be dealt with at the level of diplomacy and resolved.
Craig, we are going to go to Jim Munson, who is currently at the airport in Ottawa that has been evacuated. Jim, can you give us the latest on what's happening there?
Well, it's quite chaotic at the airport. 20 minutes ago, Lisa, they just evacuated the building. No planes are landing here. It's seen as a precautionary measure. So everybody is outside the building. Nobody is going anywhere. People are picking up their baggage, and so they evacuated the building. I have with me, though, a passenger from New York. He just flew in from New York this morning. He was at the World Trade Center yesterday. His name is Doug Rogers. He has friends there. Perhaps I can put him on the line for you right now.
Thanks, Tim. Hello, sir.
Hello.
How are you?
Hi, good.
You of all people, must be absolutely shocked at what happened this morning.
words can't explain the shock and dismay that I feel, and I just can't understand how this has happened.
Give us the layout if you can. You were just in that building yesterday.
Yes, I took the subway in the basement. There's a shopping mall and subway stations that run into the basement, and you come right out of the tower. I think it's tower number 1. And I was seeing some clients across the street, and it's just a normal way to go in and out. And to imagine that building, and both of them are, and the people in there, it's unfathomable. I can't really. Yeah. If I had seen it on TV, I wouldn't believe it myself.
Yeah, that's right. Just your name once again?
Dub, D-U-B, Rogers.
Okay, and you know, and where are you from?
I'm from New York City.
You are from New York City.
Did you know people who worked
have you
in
been
that
on the
building?
phone? Have you been talking to anybody, friends, relatives?
I haven't been able to get in touch with anyone. I've tried to call my wife and unable to get through.
As an American, can you give us your perspective on this tragedy that obviously impacted the world today as people mourn for what will be inevitable death and tragedy in your home country?
Well, it's quite a bit overwhelming to conjure up the words to try to describe it, but the only words that I can come up is with disbelief.
Were you on your way to New York City this morning? Is that what you were doing?
I was coming from New York City this morning, and the traffic was quite heavy.
So
and I didn't know what was going on. I mean, evidently nothing had happened yet, but it seemed kind of strange that it took so long to get to the airport. And I'm on my way up to Churchill to go caribou hunting and hooking up with some friends. And I don't know where they are. We're supposed to rendezvous in Winnipeg, but I'm here.
What was your reaction? Have you seen the footage of what's happened to your city?
Yes, I saw it when I was walking through the airport. I noticed there was a lot of people around the TVs, and then I saw the World Trade Tower explode, and I almost fainted. I couldn't believe it.
How do you react, especially after the World Trade Center bombing in 1993, to know that your city has been a target again, and the United States has been a target?
Well, it's again, disbelief, and I think it's unfair that they choose New York, because New York is the most culturally diverse city in the world. There's more people there from all over, and the symbol of the building itself, the World Trade Tower, I'm shaking so bad I can hardly talk.
Well, I can imagine it's difficult for you to even have perspective on this.
Yeah, we're going to let you go, and hopefully we can tell you that phone lines have been knocked down, and obviously phone calls clogging all the networks, that everything is down right now.
Word that 3 planes, we're not sure if these are 3 more planes from Dallas to LA, from Boston to LA, and another plane to San Francisco. That's the latest word. We're hearing that there may potentially have been 3 more crashes. Again, we're trying to confirm whether these are 3 additional planes or
and we have again confirmed that a flight did crash near Pittsburgh. Dub, thank you for joining us. Good luck talking to your relatives.
That's involved with this, and also too, if my wife is listening or watching it, tell her I'm okay. Jane, I'm fine, honey. I'll see you in a week.
We thank you, Dub, for giving us your
And if you can give the phone back to Jim Munson, that would be great. Jim, are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here, and Mr. Rogers just walked away in tears. He just is shaken. As he spoke, I was just putting my arm around him to keep him steady. But the little more news here. People have now been allowed to go back into the airport. I think they might have had a scare or was a precaution, but some people have gone back in, allowed to pick up their luggage. But a lot of people milling around here, and of course, no flights taking off or landing.
Jim, we can tell you, again, just to let our viewers know, and we're not sure what planes they're talking about here, but American Airlines has confirmed that it has lost 2 aircraft. Of course, one went into one of the towers at the World Trade Center, and the 2 aircraft carried a total of 156 people. And that would be 300. The 2 aircraft together carried, so that's 312 people that were lost on those planes alone. Massive casualties on the ground as well.
This doesn't include what's unfolded in the city of Washington, where there were three other attacks this morning in the span of this short morning. Jim Munson, any word on how long? I mean, this entire country really has shut down as well.
Our lives really right now should be shut down. This is the most important thing that's ever happened to us.
Well, yes, absolutely. This is devastating. I know when I walked into the airport this morning, I was going to join up with the Prime Minister to go to Halifax for a speech, and I ran into Alexa McDonough, the leader of the NDP, and both of us were trying to evaluate, and we were just stood there just shaking, talking to each other as if this could not happen in our time. I mean, most correspondents, we've covered war zones, but never a feeling like this one. This is not close to home. This is home.
Yeah, Jim, this is war. The terrorists have declared war, and you don't know. Obviously, the celebrations going on in Palestine. Yasser Arafat condemning what happened here. Palestine's
I want to bring. Sorry, Alan Bell, our anti-terrorist expert into this. What's your greatest question right now, Alan?
Well, basically, the U.S. Has said there's 3 aircraft, and they don't know 2 aircraft, and they don't know where.
Guess what? 2 more aircraft. Flight 77 from Washington to Los Angeles with 58 passengers.
Well, one of the problems with this is the fact that they know where these aircraft are wherever they are in the world because of the radar equipment, the transponders on these aircraft.
Could they be jamming them? Do they have sophisticated equipment?
Maybe they mean lost, as in, you know.
But they should know where they're located by the transponders, so they should be able to triangulate where they're actually flying, even if they can't talk to them.
So does that mean that maybe I don't know, I'm just absolutely speculating here, but there would be any technology that they would be able to somehow avert or distress radar systems in these cities that they're targeting?
And not being sort of totally au fait with aircraft, it's very difficult to do that because these happen automatically. The pilot's got no control over these transponders. So wherever these aircraft are, someone should really know where they are. And if they don't know where they are, that's another problem.
Well, you know, think about the families, though. Every single person who had any family or friend who was jumping on an airplane today, maybe the message is, you know, we can't give you that information until we're 100% sure, because everybody's going to be obviously very upset and anxious until they hear from their loved one. And we've just heard through Jim Munson, an American who is at the Ottawa airport, sending his message to his wife that he is okay. Can you just imagine, you know...
the heartbreak that's in New York City. Let's bring perspective here. 1993, the bombing at World Trade Center killed 6, injured 1,000. Again, the same group that is claiming responsibility for these attacks behind that one. April 19th, 1995, in the wake of Waco, Oklahoma City killed 168, injured more than 500. Timothy McVeigh, of course, convicted and sentenced to death. Terrorists attacked a U.S. military complex. Terrorists bombed U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania in 1998. And I look at all the numbers here, Alan, and these numbers, you know, any loss of life, one person's loss of life is not worth this cowardly attack, but this is massive.
It is. I mean, I think it's going to be unbelief once they clear up the debris, how many people have in fact been killed by this.
We have Peter Cole in the Transport Situation Room. Peter, can you give us some perspective on just what's happening where you are?
We lost.
Okay, obviously we've lost that line of Peter Cole. We'll go back to him as soon as we can.
First Canadian Place office tower in Toronto. The TSC, of course, shut down today by all of this. No one can get in or out of First Canadian Place. All airline flights within North America have been canceled. There are planes apparently in the sky that they have lost. When we say lost, apparently they do not know where these planes are. Again, those are reports. Maybe fighter jets are tracking them. And again, 2 hijacked planes slammed into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center around 9 a.m. this morning. Another hijacked plane into the Pentagon, another one into Pittsburgh.
All of Lower Manhattan has been evacuated as a result of the destruction of both towers at the World Trade Center. Do we have Alan Fryer with us from Washington?
Hey, Lisa.
Alan, you know, now I understand that any plane that was trying to get to the United States, one of them was Colin Powell, have all been turned back. So what is the impact there with some of these top officials in the Bush administration who may indeed not even be in the country at this point?
Well, obviously, I would say that the priority is getting the top leadership of the country together all at the same place, although communications, as you can imagine, are fairly sophisticated. Excuse me. The president is able to manage crises like this aboard Air Force One. It's decked out to be able to do that. Let me just add, we're getting reports fast and furious here, as you can imagine. We have seen some foreign affairs officials from the Clinton administration who have been quoted as saying that there is only one organization in the world with the network and the expertise to carry out this, and that is Osama bin Laden. Those officials are also saying that something like this would take months, if not years, to plan, and they are calling this perhaps the worst intelligence and security lapse since Pearl Harbor.
Is there anything significant, Alan, that comes to mind for, this date, September 11th? Anything?
No, not at this point that I can figure out any particular significance to this date, no.
But it does sort of make those warnings of 3 weeks ago, I don't know, I mean, it lends credence to it if something had been in the works.
We didn't hear about it, though, and I mean, obviously officials had heard about it. Again, just we want to confirm something. American Airlines, we told you earlier about the passengers that had been lost in the planes on the attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. American Airlines is saying that the flights, Flight 11, a Boeing 767 en route from Boston to Los Angeles, had 81 passengers, 9 flight attendants, 2 pilots. Flight 77, a Boeing 757 operating from Washington Dulles to Los Angeles, that would be the flight that went into the Pentagon with 58 passengers, 4 flight attendants, and 2 pilots. And that was a United flight, apparently, that went into the Pentagon. And also we have another flight, again, the first flight that went into the commuter plane that went into the World Trade Center was actually, they think, from Newark.
We're going to go right now to Pearson Airport for a live press conference.
Airport, and it's an issue for government agencies to deal with. Situation as it is at the airport, there are no flights departing Pearson Airport at the current time and for the foreseeable future for today. And that is a decision we have made in cooperation with the authorities, NAV Canada, that's the FAA of the States, and that is Transport Canada. We do have an issue where there are flights being redirected from American airspace that are in the air that need to come to airports. We're working with NAV Canada to ensure that we will be able to allow those flights to land here and to park here if necessary. So currently we are making the arrangements to clear as much surface space as possible to allow those planes to park here and to be able to handle those passengers with buses, whatever we need to do to handle them here. Obviously, this is an irregular operation. And one thing I would make clear is that regular operations simply are not happening. If people have flights scheduled for leaving Pearson Airport today, consider those not happening. If you absolutely do not need to fly today, please do not fly, do not come to the airport. That's about it, and I can take questions. I cannot speak to the security measures. I need to speak to Transport Canada about that. I can give you a phone number that is for media and public inquiries. It is 613-947-5066. We do not know. That is a decision that is being made by the FAA and by NAV Canada. Obviously, these planes are in various locations in airspace right now, and those decisions will be made by the air traffic control authorities. We're making as much space available to be able to allow them here, and we'll take what we can. Again, I won't speak to security issues. That's a Transport Canada issue. I'd appreciate it. To my knowledge, at this point, I don't think we received any of those planes at this point. It's difficult to put a number on that. We've cleared as much space as we possibly can here at the airport tarmac to be able to park them. We still have the flights that didn't get out of Pearson Airport this morning here, though, that are taking up space as well at gates. Again, I do not have the numbers. Oh, hundreds. Again, I don't want to get into specifics because they'll probably give out a wrong number. It depends on the hour. We can... Rush hour, we're talking around 50 to 60.
When you say flights within North America, does it mean that the flight that's coming from Vancouver right now is getting accepted?
Those decisions are being made right now where planes are going to be routed. So it's not a decision for the airport to make. That's an air. They have been canceled. That is. Nothing. My understanding is at this point, nothing is leaving or arriving at Pearson Airport domestically. We are ready to accept those. Yeah.
Who made the decision to?
I wouldn't say it's shutting the airport. The airport is still fully operational. We do not have any operational problems. This is a irregular operation, what we would call it. To my knowledge, yes, it is. My understanding is they are, yes. This is a decision made by multi-agencies. It's the FAA working with NAV Canada, working with Transport Canada, and us working with them. Again, I'll stress, this is an issue much larger than Pearson Airport. We're playing our role in this, but we are working with the larger agencies to make sure that we can play our role as best as we can.
Okay, then obviously that is the latest unfolding at Pearson Airport. Air Canada, again, just to reiterate, has suspended all flight departures across the system, including all regional airports, after these deadly attacks carried out by hijacked planes in the United States.
And just to confirm it, because we have received conflicting reports about what airlines they were, and just not to panic anyone, especially if they have relatives, anything. It was an American airline and an American airline jet, United commuter plane that crashed into the towers in New York City. The Pentagon, it was an American Airlines plate from Dulles, Washington, and the Pittsburgh was a United Airlines jet. And again, Alan Bell, the terrorist expert, is here. You look at all of this, and again, we talk about how this has been very conventional attack. Almost scripted from a few years ago. We've heard that, this is the worst security breach or lapse since Pearl Harbor. Washington Dulles, and again, if this report is true, how do these terrorists get on board a plane in Washington? With the most massive security, you would think.
I know. It is very, very difficult to get on board any of these aircraft in the U.S. The security is tighter in the U.S. than is in any other country in the world apart from Israel. So how they did it and how they got on with weapons or whatever, we'll probably never know.
And obviously, what about retaliation? I mean, people are going to be back there. You saw the people in the streets in New York City, throughout North America right now, are absolutely astounded that something like this could possibly happen. Is there any form of retaliation?
Well, the only problem is this whole incident is going to change the whole dynamics of the way people are going to do business in the world today. This is not just going to have an impact on the U.S. Obviously, it's going to have an impact on everybody.
The way we travel?
The way we travel, the countries we deal with, the fact that we allow certain countries to do certain things.
And I want to say, right now we have Tom Hinton, who is an airline investigation expert. Tom, you've watched this unfold with us this morning. What is unfolding now? What's the first thing that has to happen as they try to reclaim something?
Well, we're going to try to get.
There's Mayor Rudolph Giuliani in New York.
Airplanes?
Come with us.
Tom, are you?
Come with us. Well, let's talk a little later, okay?
Okay.
And Lisa, we forget sometimes that we can talk about the politics. We can talk about right now the people responsible for this.
Look at that. That is unbelievable.
And
New York City.
The bottom line right now is the human condition, the human element. The people, the lives lost, the people who are aboard those planes, the people, the families who are affected by this, the people who are traumatized around the world by watching this today. Alan, the mourning and grief for this is going to take a long time.
It is. It'll take a tremendous amount of time, and everyone's going to be angry, and everyone's going to demand the President of the United States, who's the leader of the free world, do something about it. The question is, what can he do?
And where to target.
And where to target.
Here's Tom. Tom, are you with us now? No, we still don't have Tom.
Okay, Tom Hinton will join us when he's able. Alan, look at this. This is just more images of the debris as it falls on the streets of Manhattan. The Twin Towers collapsing. So this obviously is not just a tragedy for those in the airplane of those hijacked planes or in the towers, the thousands, 50,000 people apparently worked in those Twin Towers just in New York City alone, but all of the people on the streets of New York in and around Manhattan where the terrorist attacks unfolded. And the latest on Washington, 3 attacks, one at the Pentagon, the Capitol, and the State Department. I think we have Alan Fryer with us in Washington. Alan?
Alan, are you there?
More
details, Lisa?
Yes.
Yeah,
What's the latest from Washington right now?
Well, Washington and New York, we're hearing New York Police Department officials saying now that they fear that obviously the casualty toll in New York City from those attacks are going to be in the thousands. They estimate that at that time, the World Trade Center towers, the 2 of them, held probably up to 10,000 people in each tower. Just a note that we're getting also now from the Associated Press, apparently a Boeing 767 out of Boston has made an emergency landing at the airport in Cleveland. Apparently the pilot making the emergency landing because he believed he might have a bomb on board. We're seeing in cities right across the country just security at unprecedented levels. In Los Angeles, we're now being told that police have gone on tactical alert. In Massachusetts, for example, the governor there has moved all government operations into a bunker, and Maryland and Virginia, all the suburbs around Washington, government buildings closed and evacuated, as well as schools.
Alan, obviously the world is horrified by this attack, but you think about the people of the United States in particular. They've already had terrorist attacks against them. This is going to be, well, right now, a terrified nation, but a very, very angry nation, probably calling for some reprisals, some retaliation.
What does Bush do first?
Well, I think obviously, you know, the priority has to be rescue and the victims, the survivors of these terrorist attacks, but also a lot of questions are going to be asked, as we have said, an incredible security lapse at these airports. The United States, as has been mentioned by the panel, has very tight security, the tightest in the world next to Israel. And a lot of people are going to be saying, hey, we thought we had this problem of airline hijacking licked. How is it that 4 planes, and right now we're told the FBI is confirming 4 planes have been hijacked from United States airports and used as instruments of terror? There are, as you say, going to be a lot of cries from the public from revenge. The prime target, the prime suspect at this point, from what we're hearing, is Osama bin Laden. A lot of foreign affairs officials saying that they believe that he is the only person with the network and the expertise to carry out such an attack. And I think there's also going to be a lot of questioning of President Bush himself. You'll remember that the president has come under considerable criticism since he took office for his kind of laissez-faire, hands-off approach to foreign policy in general and the Middle East in particular. I think there's going to be criticism of that. I think there's going to be an awful lot of pressure on the president to re-engage the United States, try to find some solution to the ongoing problems there.
If there are 4 aircraft hijacked, Alan, have we any knowledge of where the 4th may be? If we've got the 2 in the Twin Towers of New York City and the 3rd in the Pentagon.
Well, I believe the other 2 that they're confirming, the 2 in the Twin Towers, the one that crashed into the Pentagon and the one that has gone down near Pittsburgh.
Alan, the Middle East process continues. Is there anything out of Israel? We haven't seen anything on the wire. Any word from Israel about the attacks here?
Is this question coming to me? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Alan Fryer.
Yeah, no, right now, but there was a flash that came across the AP wire a little while ago, but this is unconfirmed, that a Palestinian group, unknown Palestinian group, has claimed responsibility for these attacks, but that information is still quite fuzzy.
That's right.
But nothing.
They've also denied that in the end. That was the Palestinian organization, the DFLP. But I think, Alan, it just indicates the numbers of organizations out there. As you say, your sources or what you're learning tells you that Osama bin Laden would have been the only organization able to really pull this off.
Right, and as I mentioned, this is going to be a different country as of today. We've talked about the obvious signs that we're going to see in place, which is going to be beefed up airport security. But obviously there is going to be a lot of calls for revenge, and there's going to have to be a lot more effort on the part of the United States to hunt down this man The president has released only one statement promising that the U.S. will hunt down those responsible and bring them for justice. But he's going to have to show results this time.
I want to understand something, Alan. Is George W. Bush, would he be more of a target, his administration more of a target than the Clinton administration, past administrations? Or is it just timing, really, that he should be the president at this moment?
Well, I think it's probably just a question of timing, but again, there has been an awful lot of criticism, as I mentioned, of President Bush for taking this hands-off approach to the Middle East, and among many Arab circles, this administration is seen more so than the last one to be on the side of Israel. The president, of course, has yet to even meet with the president of the Palestinian Authority, Yasser Arafat, and even as of yesterday, before these attacks happened, he said he had no plans to do so.
In fact, Yasser Arafat canceled his peace talks with Shimon Peres, so there's clearly nothing that resembles peace going on in the Middle East. But again, you know, after Oklahoma City, I think we all learned that we cannot assume we know anything about where this originated, these terrorist attacks.
And you might have thought that after Oklahoma City that this might not be possible in our day and age, just because that you would think that security would be so heightened everywhere, there would be so much awareness, but it's happened. And there is no comment, by the way, yet from Israel, but as soon as we get a comment, we will get it to you. It's going to be obviously a long couple of days, a long few weeks and years.
Absolutely. I mean,
and this is the biggest attack on the United States since Pearl Harbor. This is a terrorist attack.
I would say that I think Alan just made a comment that, and you want to jump in again if you will, that the life has changed forever in the United States. I think it's well beyond the borders of the United States. Clearly, this country also, which you know, we understand the TSE is closed down. Other organizations, security measures have been heightened at businesses across this country that, you know, they are our #1 trading partner. Our borders have been closed, so the impact is far beyond the borders of the United States of something like this. Alan Bell, would you want to give us some perspective, if you can, on what we could expect? I mean, we've already seen out of Palestine the sort of glee on the streets and cheering.
One of the biggest problems that a lot of people don't realize when they're actually planning to counter terrorism is you have to think the unthinkable. And whilst America does that a lot of the time, the Canadian government in the past has not done that. They don't think the unthinkable. And this is when what our planning processes have to kick in, because we have to think what's the worst thing that can impact on us as a country, a nation, and its subjects, and that is an unthinkable terrorist situation. Well, we've now just seen one. Yeah. The only thing that can beat this one is some type of NBC-type attack in North America or in some other city around the world.
And what about the attack on, like, if you look at the last one, the attack on the vessel? Mm-hmm. You know, that was sort of the sea attack. Was it inevitable that this would unfold somewhere? You know, we've looked at a couple of years between these events.
Every time counter-terrorists respond to a terrorist situation, the terrorists review the counter-terrorist response, and therefore they plan around the counter-terrorist response.
And you worry about, God forsake this could ever happen, but you worry about that, you know, Bin Laden's forces, obviously, and then they're extensive and their money is there, but you worry about some of the appendage terrorist groups who, again, it's a word we use often, may copycat. They try to send their own message.
Well, are you saying, though, that that's an interesting point you bring up, Alan, the response, was it not substantial enough then, when after we saw the last, and I'm trying to actually remember the name of that vessel that was, that exploded, the USS Cole, was it,
Oh, the
Alan?
Cole, the bomb attack on the Cole.
Right.
Well, yes, they're still investigating that, and they have got numerous people in custody.
Would that indicate, though, like if you say that they need, if an event unfolds and they look at the response, if they see weak links in response, is that what's going on?
That's right, but the U.S. came to the conclusion years ago that they were going to end up with terrorist attacks on their own soil. For many, many years, they thought it was impossible because of their infrastructure. Now it's been proved, they've been proved wrong, and now they're going to have to rethink everything.
Let's go through the day and the morning, the most tragic morning. in our lives, certainly.
Truly hard to even fathom, you know, 5 so far. We've had 5 attacks on U.S. soil, 2 planes, the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York City. No longer. The entire city has been obviously shut down, the entire country, indeed this country also.
The Pentagon was hit, U.S. Capitol Hill, State Department. Plane goes down in Pittsburgh, hijacked, a series of suicide bombings by what appears to be a Palestine group that may have been responsible for the 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center. Again, it's speculative, but you would think with their extensive ties and their networking that this group, bin Laden, is responsible for this.
U.S. President George Bush is currently making his way back to Washington, as are all of the top officials. We are going to continue our coverage here on CTV of this unprecedented, widespread attack on the United States as the details unfold. We're trying to bring you the information as quickly as it becomes available, and in the early stages of events like this, it's always very difficult.
People are absolutely
but we can
terrified.
Tell you that this has impacted world business. Absolutely everything, I should think, has changed as a result of the first attack on the World Trade Center.
67 billion pounds were wiped off the value of the FTSE.
So the impact of this, as you can see, is so far-reaching, it's difficult to even fathom.
And these poor people who were such innocent victims, again, of absolute cowards. Absolute cowards.
It's true, and it's still unfolding, the information as to whether or not there were more planes coming down. We've got Alan Bell, our anti-terrorism expert, who will stay with CTV through the day. Alan Fryer in Washington. Alan, a final word from you from Washington before we go continue our broadcast with Lloyd Robertson, who will be sitting in very shortly.
Well, just to let you know, Lisa, there have been reports earlier of other attacks in the Capitol, one at the Capitol itself and also at the State Department. Apparently now we are hearing those reports were unfounded, that there has been no attack on those buildings, on those institutions. The major attack in Washington, in the area, obviously, coming at the Pentagon, where a Boeing 767 has wiped out one wing of that building.
Okay. Also, Alan, if you can still hear me, the word to everybody in Washington has been what? To go home, to evacuate? What is the immediate word to the people directly affected by this today in that city?
To go home. All federal buildings, all schools, all state government offices have been evacuated. This place right now is resembling something as a ghost town. Most people have gotten out of town, they have gone home, and right now the only vehicles in any great number on the streets are emergency medical vehicles, military and police.
This is the country that bucks up under the face of enormity. This quite likely the most enormous impact the country's ever faced. Is it really going to be up to the government to try to calm the people of America, to convince them that, you know...
How do you bounce back from this?
I don't know.
How do you bounce back from this, Alan?
Here is Mayor Giuliani on the line now. We're going to listen into what he has to say after what happened in his city.
I realize that it must be more than a chaotic situation, particularly since the bunker has been compromised and cordoned off. But can you give us any sense? There are so many people watching now who must have loved ones down in that area and are concerned of the systematic...
My heart goes out to them. I've never seen anything like this. I was there from shortly after it happened and saw people jumping out of the World Trade Center. It's a horrible, horrible situation. And all that I can tell them is that every resource that we have is attempting to rescue as many people as possible. And the end result is going to be some horrendous number of lives lost. I don't think we know yet. But right now, we have to just focus on saving as many people as possible.
Can you give us a sense of, if there is in fact some system being implemented, what that system is, and where people are being taken?
People are triaging. People are being taken to every area hospital possible, even virtually within minutes. I drove down right past St. Vincent's Hospital, and I could see them actually on the street ready to take people, and that was within minutes of the first airplane hitting the World Trade Center. So the hospitals are ready. We'll be moving them to all different area hospitals, triaging them. The main thing is having those streets open so that we can get people in and out of the southern part of Manhattan as quickly as possible, so that we can move them, to hospitals all over the city.
And Mayor Giuliani, we'll let you...
in place. They're doing it. We just need the cooperation of people in getting out of there.
We'll let you get back to the operations there, and we do appreciate you taking the time for us here.
But once again, the only thing to do now is to remain calm and try to assist in the rescue effort.
Thank you.
Now let's pray.
All of us.
Thank you.
Thank you again, and we hope to speak with you later on in the day.
That is Mayor Giuliani talking to an affiliate in New York City. Remain calm. That's all you can do, and hopefully this destruction, these attacks will end, and hopefully the rescue efforts will continue. That is a big problem. The logistics behind all of the rescue attempts, you would think that even though these buildings have crumbled, that there possibly could be people down there who are alive. You always have to think that there might be people alive beneath the World Trade Center, and we have received word a Canadian escaped death as he walked between the World Trade Center's Twin Towers. Fred Ketchen, chief trader at Scotia Capital in Toronto, had been talking to a friend on a cell phone, and he thought he lost his conversation, but found out later that he was all right. Everyone was covered in dust.
Also, just latest information from the effect in this country, Ottawa, Parliament Hill, the east section was just been evacuated. RCMP are beefing up security. You're looking at these stunning pictures. It's just, it literally is like a Hollywood film. It's too hard to believe that the World Trade Center no longer exists after 2 airplanes, targeted attacks, hijacked planes, drove into them, and they ultimately collapsed. Same story in Washington. The Pentagon,
unbelievable,
car bomb in front of the State Department, and also an attack on the Capitol, on Capitol Hill. Alan Fryer, you're still with us in Washington.
Yes, Lisa.
The widespread impact then of the number of federal buildings in that country, really. I mean, nobody is immune on a day like this.
No, absolutely not. And, when we talk about the possible loss of life once the dust clears and we can get around to that, it is just staggering. Now, officials in New York City are saying that they thought probably about 10,000 people in each building of the World Trade Center towers, but statistics show that it could be upward of 50,000. And don't forget, there are about 150,000 tourists who visit the Twin Towers, the World Trade Center towers, every day.
There's an interesting sort of parallel we have to look at here is security. And Alan Bell, I want you to comment on this. What happens with the evacuation now of the Ottawa airport, shut down every airport in this country? We are so connected to the United States.
Well, one of the things the problems we don't have that they have is trying to get all the casualties away from the area, and all the roads are going to be blocked. There's going to be rubble and everything else. So we've got the easy side of the response. All we have to do is make sure that we don't have a similar situation happen here during the next few hours. So that's going to be our main concern. The concerns that the U.S. are going to have is tremendous. I mean, no matter how much amount of crisis management planning has been put into this, no one would have planned for this. No one would have planned for this.
Can I say that I know you've been critical in the past of some of the counterterrorism tactics in this country. Have you, though, been supportive of the money in the United States pumped into it and the way that they have organized counterterrorism in that country?
Well, their philosophy is totally different from Canadian philosophy, and the only reason why we should align ourselves with that type of philosophy is because of the border. And it's been proved time after time that people who are trying to attack the U.S. come through Canada. So therefore, it's vitally important that we adopt similar policies to the U.S. to protect ourselves and our own people.
And obviously aligned with the United States in a lot of foreign issues, particularly with NATO. How does we talk about how it's going to change the United States? How much is it going to change our country?
Well, I think it'll change it tremendously for the obvious reasons that there's going to have to be a collective decision made on response. How that response is obviously we're still a long way from that response, but we'll have to be part and parcel of that response, as will NATO. I mean, America assumed certain responsibilities when they became the policemen of the world, and now they're living to sort of live their responsibilities. They may decide to withdraw into their own areas and not be the policemen of the world, in which case what organization is going to take over from the U.S. to actually perform that function?
But, you know, that is such a great point. You know, the policemen of the world and this kind of, as you say, and I know you've reiterated it several times, nobody can stop, you know, a suicide bomber hijacking a plane and driving it into a building.
You can find ways to stop them getting into your country.
No.
No?
Not totally effective. It's impossible, because you'd have to cut down on the amount of travel. I mean, the airports now, you're probably going to have another extra hour, 2 hours if you're traveling internationally. The impact is going to just ricochet straight down the line.
And I mean, they used airstrikes today, and a couple of land strike too, but what's to prevent them, you know, now that they're going to watch the skies, now you got to watch basements again. Now you have to watch other buildings, other federal buildings.
That's right.
I mean, how do you beef it up anymore? And we've all seen at various events the security surrounding the president, surrounding any of the leaders, and also in these federal buildings. I mean, how do you improve on that?
It's impossible. Washington, because the national airport is just, there's planes in the sky around Washington, probably 10 hours a day at various different heights. And when I was there a week ago, I was amazed with the amount of planes that were flying over the Capitol. One of those is hijacked. All you got to do is push the controls down, and you crashed it right in the middle of Washington.
All commercial airlines and jets and a commuter airplane. I don't think we have confirmed that it was a jet, but a smaller plane, and able to get into the cockpits, able to get through security.
Interesting, though.
What do you think the Prime Minister, what do you think the President, how do they control things now? What is the first thing that you can do?
Well, the terrorists have always found ways to get onto aircraft, to get weapons on aircraft, and to get explosives on aircraft. I mean, that's a bigger issue. The fact that they did it simultaneously from different airports.
And a car bomb.
And a car bomb, and coordinated those attacks is also unprecedented. I mean, to bring all that together, it's to be successful.
And they have people here already who've been here for years.
That's what I can't believe, is that anybody with any kind of explosive could get that close to the Pentagon. First of all, because if there had been any evidence in the last 3 weeks of anybody, as we've heard, Osama bin Laden.
The Secret Services in both countries.
Well, you'd assume that the security would be through the roof if anybody took that seriously.
Well, as I said, to my knowledge, there are 3 aircraft which are in areas called NOTAMs, where aircraft cannot fly within a certain distance around the White House, the Pentagon, and Capitol Hill. Well, a plane never crashed into the White House, which is very surprising. But the Pentagon, close proximity of a couple of miles away from the White House, maybe they couldn't get through.
Took a direct, devastating hit, the Pentagon.
Yeah, I would have thought that they'd have gone for the White House before they'd have gone for the Pentagon.
Again, this is Alan Bell, who is a terrorism expert. You've lived through the terrorist attacks we all have over the years. And this stuff is like out of a Tom Clancy novel. Did you ever foresee that they could get the targets that they wanted here? That this actually would happen?
Yes, it was inevitable. I mean, terrorism has escalated during the 80s, 90s. We're now in a different era. Now the stakes have been raised to such a level where you're not worried about indiscriminate casualties. I mean, the chances are they probably killed a couple of thousand people today. That's never been, at least, I mean, that's never been considered in the past. Terrorists want to do one thing. They want you to shock you into giving their demands.
Now,
that's the sole reason for doing it.
The Pentagon, as you've said, is the nerve center for the U.S. military. So the message there is fairly clear then. But the World Trade Center, is it just its symbol of American capitalism?
It's a symbol. They try to take it out before. They failed to take it out before. People are in jail for trying to take it out. To take that out is a case of, well, we tried to do it, we've now done it, okay? And that's basically it.
I know you addressed this point earlier, but again, we may have some new viewers with us. Who are these people?
Well, as I said, everyone's going to be looking at the obvious candidates, such as bin Laden and some of the other Islamic fundamentalist groups, but a plan of this nature to be executed so perfectly is obviously, there's very few organizations around the world that have got the ability to do this. Bin Laden is obviously going to be the top suspect until the investigation is introduced, so it's a case of just waiting to see who it is.
And you hope it's over, but you might think that we may not be finished here.
They could come back again tomorrow or next week. I mean, we're never going to know. I mean, what we have to do is clear up what's happened now, and we've got to be prepared in case there's another one.
And the reason behind the Oklahoma bombing, of course, was Timothy McVeigh and retaliation to Waco. But the World Trade Center bombing in 1993, it was this Bin Laden group. And their message at the time was
that they wanted to attack the financial institution of the U.S. This is where all business is conducted from. The UN is in New York and everything else. So it would have been a fine prestige target.
Well, they certainly managed to do that today. Two attacks on the World Trade Center. The Twin Towers of New York City have collapsed. Also 3 attacks in Washington on state buildings, and word of others throughout the United States.
We have received word that another plane, a plane had crashed in Pittsburgh, another plane has crashed in Somerset, Colorado, and that plane probably on its way to Los Angeles.
We are going to stay with us here on CTV. Lloyd Robertson will be coming up shortly.
Here's your chance for a sneak peek at CTV's hottest new shows.
And we're hoping that people just go nuts.
It's going to be a wild ride. Absolutely. We're psyched.
That's right.
Plus, your favorite returning programs, and they're all Emmy contenders.
It's phenomenal. That's a winner.
Cool. The CTV Fall Preview, Friday at 8, 7 Central on CTV.
Congratulations, CTV, on a great fall lineup.
Imagine when this day began that all of North America would be thrown into chaos by a well-coordinated series of terrorist attacks. But that's the state we're in. The magnitude of this crisis is truly breathtaking. We are going to be on the air for several hours now, keeping you up to date with what's going on, and it doesn't seem to be entirely over yet, and keeping you posted on the developments of this morning, trying to put some context in this, trying to find out what may have happened here in this incredible day, a day of infamy. Terrorists turned the page on a new chapter of death and destruction. Terror swept across the United States with chaos and carnage. The worst terrorist attack, they're saying, since Pearl Harbor. 2 hijacked planes crashed into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center, where 100,000 people work, causing both towers to collapse into mountains of rubble, a tremendous loss of life. Both the towers of the World Trade Center, one of the New York most visible landmarks and certainly the heart of American capitalism, collapsed after a series of explosions. The first one fell at about 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. That's about an hour after 2 American Airlines passenger planes, both of them hijacked, slammed into those towers. At about 10:30, again Eastern Time, the second of those towers collapsed. All flights in and out of the United States have been grounded. Earlier, before the full scope of the disaster, U.S. President George Bush quickly labeled the incident a terrorist attack. And we're still looking at some of these pictures coming in now, taped earlier today, of the World Trade Center. We understand also, a late bulletin tells us, that another plane has gone down in Colorado. United Airlines reports that one of its planes has crashed. This is just new information in Colorado. Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat also offered his reaction to all of this. The attacks began at about 8:45 Eastern Time, when the first plane flew straight into the North Tower, and then at 9:03, a second plane hurtled into the second tower. One of the 2 planes was reportedly an American Airlines flight from Boston to Los Angeles. Witnesses described seeing bodies falling from windows of the buildings. In Washington, another attack. A plane apparently hit the Pentagon. Part of it collapsed. The White House has been evacuated, as has the U.S. State Department, the U.S. Treasury Building, and other federal agencies. And the report that we told you a moment ago about a plane down in Colorado, apparently just before that, and you may have heard this on our earlier broadcast, that another plane, a 767, is reportedly down in Pennsylvania. What we have been hearing about here is that terrorists got themselves onto these airlines and took those planes into the buildings. One was a commuter airliner in the U.S., in New York. The other one was an American Airlines jet. And, of course, the loss of life is just incredible. Mayor Giuliani of New York describes it as in the thousands. Now, we have some reaction, of course, from all over the place because the world is responding to this. We're going to hear, first of all, from the American president, George W. Bush, who was in Florida and then flew back to Washington, and we would imagine he's on the ground there now. But this was his statement before he left Florida.
Tragedy. 2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center